Hi guys, today's video is all about effective communication in relationships. And the first thing I want to say is there is a quote by Gregory Bateson, "You cannot not communicate." And so everything we do in a relationship is a form of communication, whether it's verbal or nonverbal. We're speaking to one another, we're communicating. And so I thought it would be good to go over about 8 steps of effective communication skills or things to think about when you are talking verbally and also non-verbally in a relationship. So the first thing is when we talk about communication, it's important to know how we listen. And as I've said in my other videos, we need to listen to understand instead of listen to respond. If we are in a conversation and all we're doing is thinking about how we want to respond or react to what our partner's saying, then we're not really listening. We're just thinking about what we're going to say. So we're not understanding where our partner's coming from or even what they're saying. So that's the first step. The second thing to remember when we're communicating in a relationship is, am I giving empathy, showing validation? Am I really in a place where I want to understand my partner? Where am I at? If I've had a really busy day at work and my mind is replaying different scenarios that are going on at work and my partner's trying to talk to me, I've got to let them know, like, hey, I really want to hear what you're saying, but I need a few minutes to kind of de-stress from work. So empathize, validate, let them know like where you're at so you both can come to the table and be clear-minded or be present with one another. Remember, empathy and validation doesn't mean that you agree with. You're simply stating to the other person, I'm here in this moment with you and I'm present. So that's really important to remember. The third thing is to use I statements instead of you. And what I mean by that is, I feel, I need, I would appreciate. Dr. Gottman has a statement, he calls it a gentle startup. And what he's saying is a gentle startup is actually the antidote to criticism. And it's, I feel about this is what I need or this is what I would appreciate. And, I tell people sometimes if you're in conflict in the heat of the moment, you're not going to remember that whole formula, but if you could at least remember, I need, or I would appreciate, I need a break, I need us to work things out, I need to take a minute to step back. I think it's important when we communicate in that way, like what's going on for you, then you're not attacking, you're not blaming, you're not criticizing, and you're also not defending. Which leads us into the fourth step is accountability instead of defensiveness. Sometimes it's hard to hear what our partner is saying, and depending on what you're talking about, and it's easy to get defensive or to justify where you're at. So the first thing is, again, state how you feel. Well, actually, the first thing is to empathize and validate where your partner's coming from. Because again, what you're really communicating is I hear you and I'm in this moment with you. Take accountability for your part in it. It's important to do that because if you jump into defensiveness or, justifying your behavior or just this like justification process, you're more than likely gonna end up in conflict. And so when we take accountability, then we stay in a conversation without it jumping into something that could end up hurtful or harmful. Step 5 is, people always ask, like, when do we talk about the relationship? And can we talk about the relationship? Is there such a thing as like talking too much about the relationship? And what I'll say is I often tell couples to create a couples meeting. It's good to check in with each other. You've got to find a balance of when we talk about the relationship and when we decide to just kind of go with the day-to-day interactions and the quote-unquote normalcy of our relationship. I do think it's important for couples to do a couples meeting, to check in, to say, how are we doing? What's on the calendar to, hey, we had this conflict the other day and I really want to talk through it. And there are going to be times when you're in the midst of conflict and you're talking about your relationship, but creating boundaries around conflict, around when we talk about our relationship and when we nurture our relationship All those things are important that make a relationship work. Again, you cannot not communicate. So creating a couples meeting is another important step in helping the relationship. Another step is understand and know your partner. So first, understand and know yourself, and understand and know your partner. And remember, it's not how we're alike, but it's how we're different and how we work through those differences that make a relationship work. So one example that I use a lot is when there's a stressor, some of us jump in and attack the stressor right away, and some of us need to step back and kind of process what's going on, think about it, formulate a plan, and then jump into the stressor. And so, if you know that about your partner, like how your partner copes with stress, how your partner copes with conflict, I think those are important tools. So, because what happens is a lot of times we take it personal. Oh, well, they don't want to talk about it, or, they're attacking me, or, whatever that might be. We take something personal that's not about us. So if we take for a moment and say, wait a minute, how does this, where's my partner coming from? How are we different? What's going on for me? That's not only accountability, but it's also understanding. You understand your partner enough to know that their reaction isn't necessarily about you. It's how they cope with stress or how they cope with conflict. And, I guess the other piece, and it goes back to my quote, you cannot not communicate. Sometimes our silence communicates. I hear a lot about, well, my partner just didn't say anything, and then the partner says, well, I was trying to be, respectful, or I needed time to think, and so just keep in mind, when we're not verbally talking to one another, how are we still communicating connection? How are we still communicating that I'm in this with you? So those are some important tools and things to remember as well. The step number 7, and this is one of my favorite quotes from Gottman. Actually, I have a lot of quotes from Gottman that I really enjoy, but yielding to win. So in conflict, or just when we're communicating, if at times it's starting to get kind of heated, yielding to win is not one of you winning, but the relationship's winning. And so there are times when, even if we feel like maybe we're right, which isn't a good thing in a relationship, or we really want to be heard, sometimes we have to take a step back and yield, and it doesn't mean you're never going to talk about it again, or, it's all going to be brushed under the rug, or it's nothing like that. It's a way to communicate to your partner. I value this relationship more than I value, what we're talking about in this moment. Or I really want to take the time to learn and understand where you're coming from or your perspective. Or I really want us to work on compromise. Yielding to win communicates all of those things, that the relationship wins and that you value the relationship more than quote unquote winning. So the last little tip is problem talk versus solution talk. It's okay to identify the problem, or what is upsetting you or what your boundaries are, and then to shift it to what you would like to see happen, or what you need, or how you both can come together to work on working through the issue. Remember, Dr. Gottman says there are perpetual issues in a relationship where it's not solvable. So it's going to keep coming up throughout the history of your relationship. And the best thing we can do is learn how to talk through and dialogue about the perpetual issue, as opposed to letting it get into gridlock. And then the more solvable problems, how do we want to work through them? What are the solutions? What are the ways that we can kind of get to a compromise? All right, guys, so those are, the 8 steps on some healthy communication or good communication tips to learn when you're in a relationship. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel to get weekly updates all about relationships, and have a beautiful day.